What's I don't know if it's too early, but are you getting a sense over the last couple of years about how companies themselves, your clients, are actually changing as well? We can come back to how you've set up and you manage remote teams, but the clients that you're dealing with are quite often very traditional, quite large. They're used to offices and full-time contracts, and then along comes COVID, so they've had to go and make some pivots. What sort of changes did you see during that 2 years, and what do you think is going to sustain?
Yeah, and that is actually one of the reasons we are useful for companies, right? Like the reason those companies not having a real process or tools for this because it's not something they used to do is the reason we as a young company can come into some of the bigger organizations and sell them a product that they actually don't have, right? So I actually really enjoy the fact that we're working. So we do have like from SMBs all the way to publicly traded companies, but I love the bigger enterprises because they don't have anything in place, and we get to be like the tool that they de facto use today, which for most companies, when you go see an organization like those, they already have products, right? Like it's really hard to penetrate the HR stack of the corporate, right? So I actually really appreciate that. So I mean, for us, it's been really cool seeing, I can't really name it, but there's definitely a lot of like large corporations that it's kind of one of their employee was going back home, right, due to the pandemic, and they had to find a solution. And when they see how easy it is, they're like, oh, okay, I can deploy that into more departments. I can hire more people. And I think I've seen a couple of accounts grow from like that one person that relocated into hundreds of people, right? Or, those companies that have their engineers back in Canada that says, look, I have my best friend. He's one of the best engineers because like, let's try to hire him. And, the department looks at that, no, we can't. It's going to be so hard. Stay to your perimeter. And the engineer brings in, was like, look, I can do that. It's very easy. It's as simple as an invoice. You don't have to do anything. It's been really fun to see how when you get your foot in the door and you show how easy it is, people become so much more open-minded and start more aggressively considering that. So if there's one thing I'm very proud of, there's a couple, but the fact that we are changing the way some of the bigger companies, they're very set in their frameworks because compliance, right? Regulation, compliance, how am I going to do it? How do I deal with it? Like the fact that we make the process simple enough for them to say, let's do it. Like, I was like, we just did like another use case that we've seen quite often that also graduates into more is we're doing this M&A. We're not going to keep the company there, but they have this talent there. How do I deal with that? Right. Like this is another use case of like being pushed into an organization, not because they wanted it, but because they had to find a solution. And then organically growing into, oh, okay, so I can do that. I can do that. And then growing their workforce like that is, I love seeing that.
But do you think you're going to see more companies really reach out? I mean, as you mentioned earlier, you're already global with a distributed workforce, so it's like, why wouldn't you do that? Here's company X sitting in Joburg or London, just going, well, I'm used to having the people in the locality and paying them the salary that you need for Joburg or for London. Do you think they're going to actually be willing, able to go and then say, hey, well, it's not just about let's deal. I'm really open now to start hiring people, whether it's full-time or on a contract or based on a milestone sort of, or specific task or 1,001 other things. I don't care whether they're in Bangalore, or Timbuktu. And now that we've got these platforms, this was the only thing that was holding us back, actually. So we're really going to go and start to go and do a lot more of this? Or do you think it's still sticky? We're going to be in revert post-COVID. Everyone goes, gosh, that was an interesting 2 years. Let's start hiring people back into the office.
I mean, I'm biased, right? But I think a lot of people have realized that, again, talent is everywhere. For the best of your companies, you should just try to hire the best talent. And, a lot of people are going back into hybrid mode, not only in the office. A lot of people I know will not go back to their job if they have to go back into the office as well, right? So I think we haven't solved everything. I think there's a lot of different things we need to solve to be in an even better place for companies to feel more at ease. Definitely some more forward-thinking companies that are willing to be adaptable and like comp, right? Like usually when you're a bigger company, you pay this for that person, but what are you going to pay for that person there, right? And we're working on that, for example, aggregating more data so we can open our data so the companies can understand what doesn't engineering IC1 should be earning in that location versus the location you're into. So there's definitely a lot of things we need to fix in order to make it easier and easier. But I think the marketplace is getting more competitive than ever. I think companies are, and generally after 2 years of being so flexible, right, from a workforce perspective, I think a lot of HR managers and people have understood that they can make things happen, and the tools to make those things happen are being created. And I think most of them are excited rather than scared, which is, yeah, my bet is most companies are going to have quite a bit of their workforce distributed over the next few years. That's for sure.
I'll try to pick up on a question from Johan here. It's probably not going to be quite how he's asked it, but I'll do my best. But if you think about how now this explosion of opportunity to work anywhere in the world has occurred, and it's now been the catalyst has been COVID. So use South Africa as an example. We're going to go and used to be looking to go and employ, I don't know, 10 South Africans in Joburg. Now I look at it and go, oh, what do I need to do that for? You're going to use Deal. I'm going to go and get 5 developers up in India and 6 people over in, I don't know, Haiti, whatever the hell. And it's so easy to do now. But if I was a government or a regulator, I'd start to be getting worried about that, because I'm worried I'm suddenly going to start losing the opportunity for growth and for labor markets in my own country, because it's more competitive, particularly in places like America, for example, where it suddenly becomes a lot easier for them to employ people in low-cost locations. They haven't really liked that model in what's happened in manufacturing for the last couple of years. So I suppose, are you already seeing changes in governments trying to tighten up and make it harder for people to go and employ remote workforces for their organizations? Or do you expect that to start happening in some countries?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely varies. That's something I'm actually quite interested in, and I'll spend a lot of time in over the next few years for sure. But I think there's 2 motions, right? There's like the tier 1 countries that, exactly like you said, right? I'm France, or I'm Germany, and I heavily regulate these industries because of wanting to have the IP ownership created by my best talent within the country, right? Or things like that. On the other side, on the flip side, you have countries with lots of talents like the Ukraine or Colombia. They're doing the exact opposite. They understand the opportunity for their country and for their people to get jobs at some of the best companies, right? And they make it easy, right? The Ukraine has made it easy for people to work in a compliant way with people outside of the country. Colombia is training tens of thousands of people to become software engineers, so they can work with companies from other countries and bring wealth, right? Like literally bringing wealth, instead of working as a software engineer for a Colombian company for $1,000 or $1,500, you'll get paid 4,000 or 5,000 and bring that wealth into the country as well. So redistribution of wealth is something I'm excited about rather than scared of. And I'm hoping a lot of people in a lot of countries take advantage of that to say, hey, we've got amazing talent. I don't know if that was actually a thing I learned in history when I was a little younger in France, like this idea of brain drain, right? Like the best talents in the world used to go to the United States in order to work for the best companies in the world. And countries used to lose their best talents because they had to fly and they had to go there to be at the best universities and work for the best companies. Well, guess what? Like a lot of the best universities today are on the internet. You can learn how to code and be amazing from your living room in Johannesburg or in Nigeria, and just learn how to be an amazing software engineer, and then you can get to work for the best companies in the world. I actually think that democratization of knowledge and that redistribution of opportunities is super exciting rather than worrying.